The box in the basement. As a kid, I had many disturbing things happen to me. One of these events still haunts me. It was the day of my grandfather's funeral. I never really knew him, but my mother still insisted that I go. I don't remember much of it, but what happened during it is not important. When we got back home, we were welcomed home by the sight of our front door being wide open. While my mom was concerned about any furniture that might have been stolen, I was more concerned about finding my cat, Buttons. Well, because I loved her. Unfortunately, Mom and I searched the entire house, but we couldn't find her. My mom tried to comfort me by telling me that she would be found and brought back by the Humane Society. How wrong she was. Before I say more, I should tell you about how much I hated the basement in our house. First off, it's a basement, and I was 6 at the time, so that really should explain itself. Secondly, because of my sister. She made me watch horror movies with her from time to time, and I was a very gullible kid back then. Eventually, she told me about the boogeyman, and that was that. That stopped me from ever going down into the basement. Anyway, like a week after the funeral, I started having this reoccurring nightmare about a coffin in the corner of the basement, and in it was my grandfather. In the nightmare, I was moving toward the coffin against my own will, and I stopped a few feet away from it. Suddenly, my grandfather would sit up, like how Michael Myers would in a movie, and he began to climb out of the coffin. Then he would make his figure bend and snap at all types of unnatural angles. Then he would charge at me like an athletic sprinter. I never told anyone about this. Well, until now. I had this nightmare for about 2 months in a row, and probably 3 times a week. I swear one time I actually heard my grandfather calling my name through the air vents. I was terrified at the thought that my nightmare might actually be true. But that was impossible, I thought to myself. I don't know why, but I grabbed my board game die that I used to make all my decisions for me. If both dice equaled a 1 to 6, I would go down into the basement. If I rolled a 7 to 12, I wouldn't. I rolled a 2 and a 3. Building up my courage and holding on to the only weapon I could find, a plastic pirate sword, I opened up the door to the basement and began to creep down the old, creaky stairs. I turned on the light and turned the corner, with my toy weapon ready at my side. I was relieved to find that my grandfather's coffin was not in the corner of the room. There was something else in its place, though. What I saw when I came down the stairs was confusing to me at first. I had seen a small box with a thick layer of dust on it, and a hole in the side of it. The hole looked like it had been clawed open. When I walked over to the box, I tapped on it with my sword. It didn't move. That's a good sign, because it meant there wasn't an animal in it. At least, not a live one. When I opened the box, I found my pet cat, Buttons. Except, she didn't look how she should have looked. Her fur was covered in this mud and red liquid. At the time, I didn't know about death, and blood and all that. I touched the corpse of my beloved pet, hoping that she was still okay. I was pretty confused because my mom had assured me that she had ran away. I picked up the box with my friend in it and I brought it upstairs. I remember it having this horrible odor to it, but I didn't care. I wanted to show my mom. As I climbed the stairs, I heard her talking to my aunt, who would visit from time to time. I guess she had heard me close the basement door because she called me over. I will never forget her face when I turned that corner into the living room, holding the box. Because when I entered the room, she asked exactly what was in the box. I told her it was our cat. She looked confused, and I told her simply, "Buttons." Then all the color from her face disappeared, and my aunt looked over at her with a confused look on her face. She asked me to hand her the box, so I handed it to her. She hesitantly opened up the box's lid and screamed. My aunt looked over into the box and she looked like she was going to throw up. I was confused because my innocent child mind had thought that she was just sleeping and had been walking around in the mud. My mom then tried to explain to me how all things die when they get old, using my grandpa as a reference. I hadn't noticed it until then, but my cat had a long cut across the side of her throat. My mom said she didn't know how long she had been there. She said that it was possible that she was in the basement the entire time, found the box, and then died in it. This was strange to me, because I specifically remember going down to the basement to check if she was down there. And why was there a hole in the side of the box? It didn't make sense. Eventually, we just forgot about it. Or at least, Mom forgot about it. The memory of buttons just kept haunting me as a child. In fact, it haunted me so much that I started having more nightmares, similar to the one with my grandfather. Except the cat was in the nightmare too. My grandfather would sit up like he usually did, but he was holding buttons in his arms. And instead of getting out, he proceeded to put 2 fingers in the cat's mouth and tear the top half of its face right off. After waking up from this nightmare, I began to cry. I didn't want this to be how I remembered my pet. I had to tell this to my mom, but I still kept it all bottled up inside of me. So, I kept another secret from her. A couple of years later, when I was 8, I had a sleepover at my friend's house who lived a block or 2 away from me. He didn't know about the cat or any of the nightmares or any of that. He was about the same height as me, about 3 feet tall. He had blonde, wavy hair. I had brown, straight hair. He was more athletic than me, but I could keep up with him. I'm rambling. Anyway, I went to his house to sleep over because he told me he got a new cat and he wanted me to see it. Since I adored cats, I agreed. My mom packed my PJs and a movie if we got bored, and a package of gummy worms, to share, of course. Once I got there, his dad opened the door and he was behind him, holding his new cat. He wasn't a kitten, but he wasn't that old either. He explained to me that his name was Socks, because of his white feet. Socks was so full of energy, and he never seemed to run out of it. Eventually, Socks trotted off to the kitchen, and I pulled the movie out of my backpack. Mom knew exactly which movie I liked the most. Power Rangers, The Curse of the Wolf was the title, I believe. I'm pretty sure that was the title. Anyway, it was something like that. Well, I assume we both fell asleep during the movie, because I woke up in a sleeping bag on the ground, and I checked the time on a Superman clock. It was 4:30 a.m. Why had I woken up so early? I wasn't a morning person, and even still, most morning people don't wake up that early. Suddenly, I heard a loud screeching coming from the kitchen. Being the nice friend that I am, I let my friend sleep while I went to investigate. I took his flashlight and opened up the door, slowly. It was a pretty good thing his floor was sturdy, because I did not have cat-like steps. I passed his parents' door and listened to see if they were awake. I heard his dad snoring. That was the answer. I continued onward to the kitchen, just to investigate the noise. The kitchen was completely empty. The sound was coming from the basement door. Why? Why did it have to be coming from the basement? I tried getting my friend to go down there with me, but that would have been rude since he was sleeping. Gathering my courage, I reached for the door and flicked the light on. At least I wouldn't have to worry about the flashlight. Slowly but surely, I climbed my way down the stairs to the basement. I swore I had to be dreaming because his basement looked exactly like mine. The walls were solid concrete. To the left was a window with a slight crack in it, and the furnace looked identical. There was something in the corner of the room that caught my eye. It was the exact same box that was in our basement, with the same hole clawed into it and the same smell. I was afraid to open it at first, fearing I was just having another nightmare. Hesitantly, I lifted the top off the box. Inside, I expected to see my pet exactly how I had found it the first time. But in its place was another animal. It also had a cut across its throat and its side. its forepaws were white, like it was wearing socks. I had to hold back my vomit. I screamed and closed the box and ran upstairs. I ran to my friend's room, then his parents' room, and then led them down into the basement. This time, however, Socks was gone and the box was empty. The basement even looked how it should have looked when I went down. But the odor remained. His parents were mad at me for waking them up because they had to work that day. My friend had no idea what was going on and passed back out on the couch. I was still terrified at what I had seen, and I was confused. Where had Socks gone? I swear to God I saw him in that box. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night, and I kept watching Power Rangers over and over and over again. I didn't want to go back to sleep, fearing that I was going to have another nightmare. As soon as I saw the sun come up, I walked back to my house. My friend was still sleeping, so I left as quietly as I could. Once I sat on my own couch, I passed out slightly afterward. Fortunately, I didn't have another nightmare. But something else did trouble me. I fell asleep on the couch at 6 in the morning, and I woke up around lunchtime. But I woke up in my bed. I didn't really pay attention to it until now. Then, when I leaned over to get a drink of water, something caught my eye. I was looking at a note that said, "Sweet dreams," written on it crudely, like it had been written in a hurry. And under the note was something that looked like a rabbit's foot. I would later find out that it was Socks's foot. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this story. Little bit gross, but still a pretty good one. They're all good, please. Big thank you to Dan R, Neophyte Games, Chaos X, Mr. Swiston, Official Jerboa, JY Pyromancer, Hayden MH, Ethan A, Daniel H, Maximilian Charles P, Deneen H, and Go Go Cute Puppy LLC. Thank you.